Hey, good afternoon. Welcome to today's edition of the Coal Seam. I'm Chris Hamilton, and I'll be your host over the course of the next 25 minutes or so. Joining me in the studio today is Mr. Jason Bostic. He's a regular on this show, and he always brings us a wealth of information and a lot of current developments within the coal industry. So, hey, Jason, thanks for stopping by, and
Sure.
appreciate you taking the time from your busy schedule. You know, probably a good place to start today is what we experienced last weekend when West Virginia University deemed Saturday's game as the coal rush, and they had a special coal uniform to honor and recognize coal miners in the state and the coal mining tradition that we've all enjoyed and benefited from. So I thought it was really a special day.
Yeah, it was a great night, Chris. And I think, the thing that made it so special for us, we were involved somewhat in that process, not a whole lot, but was the university's intense interest in how to make that special for the coal industry and our coal miners. And they actually, as you know, the team went to one of our mines in northern West Virginia, Lear, the Lear mine that belongs to Arch Resources, and spent some time with the folks and hung out and took some pictures and did some artistic renderings of that stuff and came up with a great theme, I think, for the game. And I know, me sitting at home, I didn't go to Morgantown, but just watching it from afar, if I was a coal miner and still being in the coal industry, it really did cause us a swell of pride, I think, for our folks, and it was real special for them. And I think it was also, an acknowledgement by the university of the importance that the coal industry played in their history and will continue to play in their existence, I think.
Well, I couldn't agree more. I was at the game, and I tell you, the excitement, the energy, I mean, there was a buzz in the air. They had new stadium lights that were not flickering, because of issues, but they were kind of turning the lights on and off, and, the miners accompanied the Lear miners accompanied the team as they come onto the field. And I mean, they were within, they were all wearing miners' clothes. They had miners' hats on, belts, and I mean, it was really pretty unique and special.
It was. So again, just me watching it from afar. And I think the other thing it did was it lended the visuals that enacted what I think most of the people of the state of West Virginia think about our coal miners and our coal industry, how proud we are of them. And the other thing I also think it helped to do was dispel the myth that, coal's a thing of the past and it's some artifact of the Industrial Revolution whose time's, already passed. Just using the Lear mine as an example, that's a relatively new development. And, $500 million of investment, and it will be there for decades to come.
$500 million, correct?
$500 million.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And it'll be there for decades to come. And the coal that those men and women are producing are forging steel around, not only in this country, but around the world for everything from your iPhone to your next new car.
I think a lot of that coal goes to Korea, is that correct?
It does. South Korea is one of their biggest customers.
So we send high-grade metallurgical coal to Korea from the Lear mining complex, and what comes back? Is there anything comes back?
Primarily automobiles. The
Okay.
auto industry is a huge customer for that particular blend of metallurgical coal. But about 6 months ago, I just kind of did an inquiry and talked a little bit to the company. And the coal from Lear and its companion sister mine, Lear South, I think lands in 28 countries around the world, plus the United States.
Wow. I've been in the Lear mine, and I tell you, those miners up there, that mining complex is, as you indicated, state of the art. It's just a electro-hydraulic computerized operation. You have advanced mining technologies out the kazoo. I mean, they're just present in every application and aspect of mining there. It's state of the art. It's it's truly one of a kind type operation.
It really is. And Chris, when I went, a couple of years ago to Lear myself, when it was a little newer, and hadn't been underground on a long wall in probably 10 years or better, and even me, lifelong in the coal industry, I was shocked and surprised, pleasantly surprised, at the level of technology and development and sophistication in that particular complex. And
Now that complex is new. We need to also single out that throughout the state you find very similar equipment being utilized, whether it's Blackhawk Mining down the road here, American Consolidated, Alliance Coal up north, United Coal, Consol Energy. I mean, you'll find many of those same advanced mining technologies employed all over the state.
absolutely. You walk into the control room of one of our preparation plants, whether it's in McDowell County or in Upshur County or in Marshall County, and to the untrained eye, you would think you were in a computer control center. And these are the preparation plants, what were historically called tipples, which were some of the dustiest, dirtiest, noisiest places to work. And you walk in and there's just this quiet hum of activity and lots of people with lots of sophisticated equipment controlling millions and sometimes billions of dollars of coal product.
Talk about the equipment, talk about Arch Resources, talk about the mining complex. I tell you, the miners there are very special as well.
Absolutely.
I mean, they have literally decades of mining experience. They have just extraordinary competency and qualification, and they go about their job each and every day with tremendous pride and sophistication. I mean, just make the entire industry stand out. This is today's modern, industrialized workforce and workers, and to think of what they go through, not work necessarily, but because of all the criticism towards mining, and this movement that wants to transfer these individuals to some other occupation. We've had presidents, we've had former presidents, the existing president, the current president, vice president, have suggested that our coal miners, take up some other occupation. That is so insulting and so offensive to suggest that these individuals, who work so hard, and when you think about what they do, they create energy, baseload energy. They create a needed ingredient for our basic infrastructure needs with the production of the met coal for steel. They're responsible for us having a national security, an energy independence second to no other country in the world. We have primarily because of the accessibility to low-cost electricity and power, we have this extraordinary life here within the United States and a very powerful economy. And that's all, in my opinion, due to having accessible, low-cost energy, as the state of West Virginia has always had.
It is. And to your
And you can even roll that back a little further and attribute that to coal mining and the importance of mining historically over the years.
Yeah, and to your original point, Chris, about the men and women that do this kind of work, I am continually impressed when we go around the coal industry, go around to our members and to their mining operations, and see the level of professionalism and the young folks, younger professionals that are into the mining business, both male and female. And I think the Coal Rush Night at the university was a way, again, to give those folks something to be proud of, because like you said, if you wake up every day, as we in the coal industry have now for at least the last 4 years under the current administration, and every single newspaper headline is directed at trying to take your livelihood away from you. And West Virginia having the history of mining that it does, I think a lot of people don't understand you're not just talking about somebody's job, you're talking about the social fabric of their world, their family, their community. These towns in West Virginia exist because of the coal industry. And when you take that source of revenue and that source of a job and income and pride away, you're really not left with a whole lot. And unfortunately, the state is full of examples of where that's happened through the efforts of the federal government, particularly the Obama administration, where entire communities were devastated.
Great point. And it's an understatement to say that these miners that have contributed so much to this state, region, and country, they deserve so much more from their government. than waking up every day to a dosage of coal bashing.
Exactly.
And that's what we're seeing. I mean, they've tried to make them all AC repairmen 25 years ago. Then they wanted to get them into, some other profession. I think President Biden wanted them to be computer entry technicians. They love what they're doing, and what they're doing is so critically important to our society. They just deserve so much more. I mean, each and every one ought to get a Great American Award.
Absolutely.
I mean, they really should.
And I was,
held in the highest esteem.
Yeah, and I often reflected, over the past 2 years when the Ukrainian invasion, when the Russian invasion of Ukraine created a worldwide energy crisis. And we in West Virginia and our members were adding extra shifts at their coal mines to make sure that Europe didn't run out of energy or the lights didn't go out in Europe. And the fact that that's a continent that reflects a lot of the current administration's thinking that the coal industry is just an artifact of the past and you can retire it. Well, it's the West Virginia coal miner that worked 4 hours overtime the night before that kept your heat on. So, back to the point about the rush game, it's the acknowledgement that this industry and its folks that support us and make us as great as we are, that they always deserve. And it was refreshing to see that last weekend.
So a couple things last Saturday. First of all, the miners walk with what traditionally is known as the man trip. And of course, man trips are those vehicles that take miners from the surface to their workplace, once they get to the seam, as you know. And so they have a man trip, which involves the team walking from the bus into the stadium. Then they have this large piece of coal inside the stadium that the miners the players all kind of touch, and they do similar things around college football stadiums. They'll touch a rock, they'll touch a statue, but in Morgantown, West Virginia, Mountaineer Field, they touch a big block of coal. And then the miners themselves accompanied the team as they come onto the field. To just level of excitement and appreciation that was expressed, for the mining industry was just unbelievable. It really was. And over the course of the game, they would recognize the arch miners. They recognized the school's mine rescue team, which has taken, this is at the mine engineering program and the mine extension service. They have a mine rescue team that has won national contests repeatedly, had that team come out on the field. On several occasions, they've asked everybody in the stadium that had mining experience or had a relative that worked in the mining industry to stand up and be proudly counted. And 3/4 of the stadium was standing. I mean, it was just to see all that, up there at the peak of a very important ball game, which we lost incidentally, which, that's a whole other story and a little bit of a disappointment to the night. But
I think it became a second thought, though.
I do too.
Because it was such a special night.
I really do.
For the coal miners.
And the one thing that stood out at me when they asked everybody to stand, and practically the whole stadium is standing, that's our workforce in West Virginia.
Yep.
About the same number of people that turn out to watch a Mountaineer football game. That stadium, I believe, holds about 66,000 people. That's how many people that we have involved here in the state of West Virginia that's involved in some aspect of the mining industry.
Yep. Really impressive. Yeah.
No, it really is. So
And I hope, based on what we saw last weekend and the outpouring of appreciation that we've seen amongst our members and amongst our coal miners, that the university makes that an annual thing. I think that would that would be a great idea for the state, be a great idea for the university. And again, it would certainly help us bring recognition to our folks that don't get it as often as they should.
We used to have the Coal Bowl in the state, where West Virginia University would play Marshall University early in the season, and that was deemed the Coal Bowl, and we were very much a part of that. And that was a special occasion. again, to bring attention. A lot of scholarships were involved, and just a lot of support for the coal industry throughout that series. Probably unfortunate that we let that one get away. In my opinion, we still ought to be playing the Coal Bowl every year, and being a sponsor of that unique matchup between Marshall and West Virginia University.
Mm-hmm. This might serve as a good substitute.
Moving on just a little bit, there was an important decision by the United States Supreme Court, which elected not to issue a stay on EPA's currently proposed or currently effective carbon rule.
Yes, sir.
And I know that's disappointing, but doesn't necessarily reflect a decision of that court on the merits of the case.
No, Chris, as you know, the carbon rule was issued, I think, earlier in 2023. I believe we're a year away. It took it some time to be effective, but it is essentially the second version of the Clean Power Plan, where EPA would impose strict restrictions on carbon emissions from not only coal-fired power plants, but new natural gas-fired power plants. Existing plants were exempt from the rule. But contained in that administrative rulemaking were some pretty draconian and pretty extreme deadlines about how much longer a coal-fired power plant could operate. Now, EPA's position is that carbon capture sequestration technology could be deployed at these facilities and allow them to operate beyond the deadlines in the rule. But as you know, that technology continues to be evolving and developing. It's not nearly as deployable as what EPA or the deadlines in that rule would have you believe. So there was a coalition of 26 states led by the state of West Virginia, our Attorney General Patrick Morrisey, and by the regulatory agencies with clean air responsibilities within those states, like our Department of Environmental Protection here in West Virginia, that challenged the rule. And that challenge went to the D.C. Circuit Federal Court in Washington, D.C. But because the time frames were so expedited, everybody felt like it was worthy to ask the Supreme Court for a stay just to stop the implementation of the rule until the D.C. Circuit could entertain the merits of the case and decide whether or not it was legal or not. And as you said, the Supreme Court chose not to issue the stay. But I don't think that is any prediction at all as to the success of whether or not the challenge will ultimately end in our favor. There were some timing issues and some internal somatic issues with the stay request that the Supreme Court chose just not to grant that, because unlike the first Clean Power Plan under the Obama administration, where it was almost effective immediately, this one does have some lag time in it. I think the state plans to implement it are not due until the summer of 2026. Even though we as a state, DEP and state government here are going to have to start working on those plans. They wouldn't really be effective until June of 2026. So the Supreme Court felt like there was enough time to let the legal arguments at the lower court play out.
Well, and as I understand it, the lower court has put this whole case on an accelerated schedule.
Yes.
So it's questionable whether there's any real irreparable harm by not issuing the stay before this case ripens and is decided.
Yeah.
Which I understand is fairly imminent.
Yeah,
a couple months.
Yeah, I think the reply briefs of the industry challenges and the state challengers, I think, are due
next week,
as early as next week, I believe. Mm-hmm. So yeah, the D.C. Circuit did kind of take the case out of the normal queue and put it at the top for expedited review. And I think the Supreme Court was just aware of that and didn't want to trample or override the lower court. Let them have their process, let them go through. And the order issued by the Supreme Court denying the stay and did give some indication that should the lower court, this D.C. Circuit, decide to uphold EPA's rule, that the Supreme Court, would probably entertain again a stay motion. Because at that point, once we get a decision from the D.C. Circuit, those deadlines will even be closer, and the case will be more ripe. So they kind of left the door open that should we lose, the states lose, and the industry lose at that lower court level, come back to us and ask again for a stay.
There's also indication that, depending on the outcome of the November 5th election, i.e. if President Trump returns to the White House for another term, we could very well see EPA make some move to amend or modify its rule, or maybe even pull it back and re-examine it.
Yeah, that's been our experience in the past, because it's kind of the unfortunate nature of politics, especially when administrations switch between one party to the other in a single term like they have in the last few, is the revolving door. I call it the revolving door of regulation. But EPA under a Trump administration will likely just ask the court to dismiss the case, that we, EPA, are going to voluntarily remand the rule to ourselves and issue a new rule, a new regulation that would be more in line with the landmark case that our Attorney General here in West Virginia, Patrick Morrisey, received a couple of years ago called EPA versus West Virginia.
That was a WV, West Virginia v. EPA landmark decision.
Yeah, where the Supreme Court really tried to put some sidewalls around what has been for the last 30 years, I think most legal folks would speculate, has been an unbridled exercise of authority by executive branch agencies.
Especially EPA.
Especially
I don't think
EPA.
there's no other agency that's quite as independent, exercises that independence as EPA.
Yeah, and as much as the legal pundits around the country wanted to point to what they called the extreme nature of the West Virginia versus EPA decision, I think if you took the time to read it, what the Supreme Court said was, but for the ridiculous actions of executive agencies, such a decision like this wouldn't be necessary. So we are responding to the executive branch trying to exercise the powers of the legislative branch that Congress never envisioned.
And in a lot of ways, the rule that was struck down previously by the United States Supreme Court is very similar than the rule that EPA is moving on right now.
It is. And EPA would have you believe that's not the case. But when you talk about something as complicated and as integrated as the nation's electric grid, as you know, Chris, we are all part of this big electric ecosystem that spans from sea to shining sea in the continuous states of the U.S. And you can't unplug or alter one piece of it without assuming that it's going to have reverberations in the states and areas around you. So when EPA says, no, this new carbon rule doesn't go beyond our authority under the Clean Air Act to regulate the nation's electric system, because of the nature of that electric system, it actually does. If you force, say, a John Amos power plant down the road here or the Mitchell power plant in Marshall County to close early, that will not only affect the state of West Virginia, that will affect the PJM electric system, which is 13 of our surrounding states. And if you look at the precarious balance of supply and demand, if you take megawatts off in PJM, which is kind of the northeast block of the United States, a little bit of North Carolina, Virginia, part of Kentucky, then it's going to affect PJM's ability to supply power to a chronically short MISO system, which is the middle part of the country. So for EPA to say that, no, we're not going to manipulate the electric system, which was the allegation in the first West Virginia versus EPA case, that holds true in the current case as well, because it will have that effect. It will disparately impact coal-fired power plants.
On one hand, we have this sudden unexpected surge in electrical demand and power demand that's underway before us right now. It's happening with all these large data centers, artificial intelligence, more and more reliance on home computers, home shopping, electric cars being charged, manufacturing, subsidized manufacturing that's been stimulated by huge, unprecedented government grants it's creating this huge demand, and all of your utilities and electric systems are currently revising how much power they're going to need in the next few years and over the course of the next decade. And it's huge volumes. I mean, it is just an exceptional amount of power that's required. And at the same time, we're trying to ratchet down, one of the most reliable, consistent, affordable power systems, that we have within our energy ecosystem. It just makes those two things are just totally incongruous. Makes no sense whatsoever.
No, and I think that's, for the first time to my knowledge, Chris, in this particular case we're talking about now, you had the majority of the electric power grids, the independent system operators, the regional transmission operators, the PJMs, and the MISOs that we talk about all the time, that joined in that case and pointed out in a brief to the Supreme Court that this rule needs to stop, that you can't continue to accelerate and punish coal-fired generation because we need it for the status quo. Much less when you talk about adding the new data centers and the electric vehicles. Just to maintain the system as it stands now at current load, we need these coal-fired power plants. But then you layer on the forecasts that everybody's becoming more and more aware of, we desperately need them. And I think that's the first time that those quasi-government electric grid operators have ever joined in a case like that to make that point with the Supreme Court.
We've had a situation here over the past 7 or 8 years now with Governor Justice, Attorney General Morrissey, and others within the PSC structure, our legislative leaders. They have all worked together to make sure certain upgrades are made to our coal-fired plants. They recognize the value, the importance of these plants to keep our state's energy ecosystem intact and running at a high level. And it's really good to see that they appreciate the coal supplies, all the hard-working coal miners that contribute to that. And just the economic importance, of those in-state coal-fired units that we have. We're running out of time. This has been exceptionally fast, and we'll come back and explore the importance of these 9 in-state coal-fired electric manufacturing facilities that we have here within the state over the course of the next couple of months. So Jason, thanks for coming.
Absolutely.
And thanks to our viewing audience for joining in today's edition of the Coal Scene on the Library Television station.